session for any reason, please click the Leave button. Closed captioning. While not identified on the slide, if you would like to view live captions during today's session, please click the ellipses, the three dots going across, click on Language and Speech, and choose Turn on Live Captions. And Margaret, I will turn it over to you as our moderator.
Thank you, Robbie. Hello and welcome. This is the fourth of 5 webinars to advance cooperative development. The final webinar will be on envisioning an equitable cooperative ecosystem. Recordings of our previous 3 webinars this year on housing co-ops, co-ops in the food supply chain, and childcare co-ops are available on YouTube. See the chat function for links. And if you are not speaking, if you can please mute yourself. We've got some feedback. Thank you. The USDA Cooperative Services Branch created a website in support of the Interagency Working Group on Cooperative Development. The site highlights partners in support of cooperative development at the federal, tribal, state and local, and private sectors. Links include funding resources, development tools, publications and information, as well as success stories. The website is a work in progress, so please visit the website and provide us with feedback for improvement. Now, Dr. Karama Neal, Administrator for USDA Rural Development, Rural Business Cooperative Services, will provide opening remarks.
Thank you so much, Margaret, and thank you to you all for being here today. We are really pleased to have so many of you participating in this subcommittee meeting on real estate investment cooperatives. We're, of course, extremely excited because there's so many of you both within and outside of the federal government here to talk about this important topic. The 2014 Farm Bill authorized the Secretary of Agriculture. I think someone may have their mic on. Just a reminder to please mute. Thank you. So I'll just continue. The 2014 Farm Bill authorized the Secretary of Agriculture to chair this interagency working group on cooperative development to ensure coordination on cooperative development among federal agencies and private sector organizations. We are, of course, honored to have such an important role in supporting cooperative development. Cooperatives generate jobs, they bring needed goods and services to people, especially where there are market failures, and they are resilient in economic downturns. Cooperatives can also create an ownership asset for the members. Cooperatives operate in all areas of the economy, as you all know: agriculture, utilities, food service, energy, financial services, insurance, construction, housing, healthcare, childcare, early childhood education, and real estate, which of course we're here to discuss today. So all these forms of cooperatives, worker co-ops, producer co-ops, consumer co-ops, and more, remain an important form of business because their form facilitates resiliency and can weather economic shocks. This level of resiliency is particularly important in today's, given today's economic, health, and other environments. The member patrons of the cooperative own, finance, use, and democratically control the cooperative. Financial benefits from the cooperative's businesses remain with the member patrons in the form of patronage refunds, and so they stay in the local communities where members live. This is especially important for rural communities. Since cooperatives are democratic organizations whose members have a voice in how the business is run, cooperatives produce creative solutions, particularly in times of crisis. In the case of worker cooperatives, for example, members can change their operations or opt to take smaller paychecks rather than dismiss workers or go out of business. They can change how they market and move quickly to take advantage of new opportunities. These values and these flexibilities allow cooperatives to fill market gaps, address community needs that might otherwise go unmet. This, of course, is also true of real estate investment cooperatives. These cooperatives, permanent real estate cooperatives, cooperative homes, housing co-ops, and others help residents and investors build assets, protect against gentrification, protect neighborhood diversity, and provide and sustain community benefit. For those reasons, we have convened this meeting today to foster cooperative development and ensure coordination with federal agencies and national and local cooperative organizations that have cooperative programs and interests. We hope this group can seize this important opportunity to make programs across the federal government better known and better understood, and bring people within and outside government together for greater synergy in cooperative development, particularly in the real estate sector. So we're excited that you're here. We look forward to this conversation, and I'll turn it over so we can get started. I will now turn it over to Margaret Ball at the Cooperative Services Branch. Turn it back over to her. Margaret.
Thank you, Dr. Neal. And now we would like to turn it over to Kevin.
It's a webinar
Edberg.
about real estate cooperatives.
And if you could please mute yourself if you are not speaking. Thank you. Now we would like to turn it over to Kevin Edberg and Charlotte Nargis to provide an overview of the real estate investment cooperative concept. Kevin is the Executive Director of Cooperative Development Services, which provides technical assistance to Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Iowa. Charlotte Nargis is a community vitality educator with the Nebraska Cooperative Development Center at the University of Nebraska in Lincoln. Both Kevin and Charlotte have hands-on experience organizing real estate investment cooperatives and in thinking deeply about the role these co-ops play in community resilience. After this webinar, Kevin suggests viewing short videos by the Minneapolis-based Northeast Investment Cooperative. The 3 videos provide a flavor of the community support that real estate investment cooperatives foster. We're not going to share those videos now, but we encourage you to view them at your leisure. So without further ado, Kevin and Charlotte. Kevin, you're on mute. There we go. Nope. No? One more try, Kevin. Let's see here.
Does your computer up at the top, Kevin, by the leave button, does it have a microphone emblem up there?
Yes. How's that now?
Great. Perfect.
All right. I was muted by somebody else before, so now we're good. So on behalf of Charlotte and myself, welcome, and it's good to see so many of our colleagues. If we go to the next slide, please. Next one. So Charlotte and I, as Margaret said, have hands-on experience, but we both want to recognize our colleague, Leslie Watson. Leslie was a early board member and board chair of the East Side Food Co-op in Northeast Minneapolis, the neighborhood that she lives in. When she and a number of her colleagues on the avenue started talking about the condition, the economic condition of Northeast Minneapolis, it was her knowledge of co-ops as well as that of the local food co-op manager, Amy Fields, that said we ought to form a co-op to address our local community issues. Leslie was the source of many of the energies in back of NEIC, as well as other projects, and this work would not have been possible without her. Her intellectual contributions will be present inside of our presentation today. So she's not on the call, but we want to acknowledge her. Next slide, please. So our purpose today is to 4 things. Number 1, just to introduce the concept of real estate development co-ops. Number 2, to share some history. 3, some emerging resources that are being developed to support groups seeking to form community investment co-ops, and to share some lessons learned from our experiences in both Minnesota and Nebraska. Next slide, please. In doing this, we kind of schlumped into the conversation around a community investment co-op. I want to give complete credit to the inspiration provided by the Sangudo Opportunity Investment Co-op in Alberta. Paul Sabai is on our call today. Their inspiration was truly motivational for the folks in Northeast Minneapolis when they first contacted me about 14 years ago. and said, hey, we're thinking about redeveloping Central Avenue in Northeast. We think we would like to do something like this group in Alberta has done. What can we do? Where can we go? As we did some research, we found that there actually was another community investment co-op in the River West neighborhood of Milwaukee. They have since ceased operation, but they too provided some insight into the use of this model. I think it would be misleading for us, and we'll dissect this in a little bit. There is not one specific real estate investment model. There are multiple flavors, and Charlotte will describe some of those. But in essence, we're talking about the aggregation of community capital, where capital that is important, necessary to the work, not necessarily seeking to provide maximum economic return, but a social rate of return. We see this in many cases as we look at the development of housing co-ops or the development of community food co-ops. This investment in community is not necessarily to seek a market rate of return, but to seek an improvement in the living conditions of member owners or the living conditions of the living conditions of the community, the economic conditions of the community. And so that's an important consideration that affects multiple motivations throughout the process. But we want to acknowledge that we've learned from other folks, and I'd like to share a little bit more about the specific NEIC experience. In all of that, though, we are still working with a very small data set. We are working with a relatively narrow base of experiences. We're building that and sharing information, but this is not a tried and true recipe. There is no one cookbook available. What I learned when I was approached in about 2010, 2011 was that this concept has opportunity of unlocking that capital to do some really good stuff. My experience was with the steering committee, the Northeast Investment Cooperative. They were formed in 2011. And as I noted a moment ago, to specifically focus on economic improvement of the conditions on Central Avenue, the main street, if you will, of Northeast Minneapolis. That co-op started with a group of 4 people that started aggregating ideas and said, what can we do? They built a membership base. They looked for their first projects. They acquired a building and renovated that. They actually acquired a parcel that had 2 buildings on it, and I'll show those in just a moment. The idea was that they were going to use community capital to fix up and retrofit, rehabilitate the buildings, and to be patient landlords, because what they were finding is the owners of parcels on Central Avenue were mostly absent from the community, and they were seeking to replace this absent leadership and capital with local capital to sponsor the kind of businesses that they wanted to have in the community. I'll show that in just a moment. But after this first project, they did a second project. So they currently own 2 properties and are in process of thinking about a third. But they currently have over 300,000 member owners, over $500,000 in equity. And their capital structure was they wanted to go after $1,000 as a base share and then provided opportunities for additional investment through preferred shares afterward. Next slide, please. So what their first project was is these 2 buildings. It was one property parcel. It's located just across the street from the East Side Food Co-op. The building on the right was known as Old Yeller. It had been in the community for a long time. That's a metal facade. Most folks considered it an eyesore in on the avenue. The building on the left, as you can see, was a discount furniture business, and the 2 buildings were acquired together. The co-op aggregated their capital, got a loan from a local community bank, embarked on fixing up, rehabbing the building. Upon acquiring the parcel, the building on the left was actually sold to another small business that was looking to expand. The Recovery Bike Shop had been located across the street in an unused portion of the food co-op, and they were bursting at the seams, so they bought the building on the left, and the co-op then took on the restoration and rehabilitation of the building on the right. And the results of that can be seen in the next slide, please. So this is what that old Yeller looks like after they took off the facade. They renovated and found two local businesses. Fair State Brewing Cooperative is a consumer-owned brewery located. This was their first location. They also attracted a German baker. Aki's Bakehouse is on the right. They make great pretzels. The impact of this project was huge. Over 25 jobs were created in that parcel, the two buildings combined. You can see the clear improvement in the physical infrastructure on the avenue, and both of these two buildings, within about 2 years of opening their buildings here, both needed to find additional wholesale production space elsewhere to support growing sales. So between the bike shop, the operations on the avenue, and then the wholesale operations were on top of that. Fair State needed to get bigger brewing facilities. Aki needed to find a bigger bakery for his wholesale accounts and use this as their retail location. So this is an example of the transformation that occurs that's possible when you aggregate commercial, local capital to take on a community-based project. Next slide, please. So using the international cooperative identity, we know that a co-op is a business owned and operated by the people who use its products and services and who benefit from what it has to offer. Next slide, please. So in the parlance that Dr. Neal referred to just a moment, there's member capital or member finance, member equity, there's democratic member control, and then there's this member benefit. Now, in the case of a housing co-op, which might be thought of as a form of a community real estate investment, the people who benefit are those who live there. There is an improvement in their lives and they participate directly. What we find in a community investment co-op is sometimes the folks who are actually using the businesses, or using the services, so for example, Aki's Bakehouse or the brewery, might be thought of as the more active users of the cooperative, and the role of investors as members. It creates a little bit of a, we need some unpacking. We're not going to do that here today. I just want to call out that that is a tweak that that we need to think about. Next slide, please. So as a result of the experience that we had at NEIC, I had an opportunity to meet with Charlotte, and Leslie had at that time become a part-time employee of CDS. And we made a connection between our two organizations, and I'm going to throw the ball to Charlotte to continue this part of the story.
Okay, thank you, Kevin, and thanks for giving the overview of the investment cooperative, what they are. Beatrice, Nebraska came to NCDC to ask to form a cooperative, and largely due to things going on in their community. They had a lot of dilapidated houses. They had also a lot of vacancy in their downtown area, and they wanted to find a way to engage more community members. They found the NEIC model, and if you haven't explored that site, you should. They have some great documentation on it. And that led them to actually contact us. And as Kevin said, we reached out to CDS and connected to Leslie. One of the things, as Kevin's alluded to, Leslie told us at that time, and this was back in 2019, that she had had well over 100 people contact her about forming investment cooperatives. You're going to hear some great examples today, but there are very few things. Beatrice, I'll share a little bit about them. They actually have their articles of incorporation and bylaws created now, but COVID really slowed them down. And so I'm not going to really talk a lot about, but maybe emphasize some points. but more talk about emerging resources that we hope can help others exploring the cooperative investment cooperative model. So next, please. So Kevin alluded to the fact about flavors, and in the opening, there's different types. It's just really a loose. This is not all the types of cooperative investment cooperatives they are. But one of the things when we started working with Beatrice, and what I will give credit to Beatrice that they were really helpful on, since we'd never had the model, they were interested in helping document it too, that could maybe help others. So they piloted a lot of what we were trying to do. But the flavors were used that Leslie used to describe the types. So if we go to next, please. You'll see that there's a number, the next slide, please, or you do have it there. Sorry, I didn't go to the next slide for myself. Apologize. So the investment club which is Sangudo, the Opportunity Development Corporation that Kevin alluded to. That one, just so that you know, and Paul may be sharing more about this in the future, but there's only 309 people in that community, and it's an hour and a half from Edmonton. So you think it was a small remote place, a group of 22 members instigated and worked together. So in the particular model of the investment club, it's a small group of people starting, more are invested now, but they initially raised $220,000 and have worked on a number of projects. And their benefits are focused on the community of social and economic well-being, and the members to invest in the community. And they're continuing to be successful and grow. The next one is the Community DIY, and the NEIC is an example of that. Kevin alluded to that some people got together at coffee and formed it. Beatrice was that way as well, where it was more coming from the bottom up. And this is an example that Autumn, when she talks, her example is more of a DIY, and when Nicole shares, hers actually is more, I think, a little bit more investment club, but probably a little DIY too. Beatrice, the one difference though from the other is that they were forming to it came from the Lead Main Street program, and so an organization was actually starting it, which and so that was that. The other two areas that we're going to talk about, and that we don't, some of the is member wealth building, which could be housing and the co-op housing. You've talked about housing before and how co-ops can help. We're not really going to share an example right now of that, but a lot of your ROC co-ops could be part of that. And then community wealth building. And community wealth building is where it really is that to get some real estate and get some control over some real estate, and they're trying to aggregate it. It's designed to build healthy collective housing, and that was in the Bay Area and successful model there. I'm going to keep moving on, trying to watch my time here to help. Sorry. On this next slide, basically just that these are things that you're going to see no matter what. Everything's going to be different based off that flavor, and you have to think about it from that perspective. But you have to have the vision, the member benefit, what it is, and that's critical. Go ahead and go to the next slide. And then when you think of what's required, the commitment and time cannot be overemphasized. I think in Beatrice, one of the things that I feel like they had the commitment and passion of some, but because they were part of an internal organization that became challenging, I think at times, because community members, they had well over 40 people interested in helping, but not maybe take leadership. And so I think considering that when you're moving forward of what it is that you need, and that it really does take leadership and collaboration, knowledge and learning. Friendly state law. I've seen some things about the taxes. The state law, it's so driven. One of the things that we did up front is when we came here, can we even do this in Nebraska? We have different laws than Minnesota. We learned that we could, you just be creative with the laws and work with attorney. That we spent quite a few hours on this, and Kevin alluded to that. But if you're interested in it, that's probably one of the first things you want to do. Let's go to the next slide then, and Kevin, this is back to you.
Yeah. So I'm stepping away from the up and coming food co-op startup conference that's being held here in St. Paul this weekend. All of the presenters on this call are members, all of the members of Cooperation Works. We collaborate and share our insight and expertise of similar projects across space and time. The outcome of that is that we can start discerning and developing systems and approaches that work more ubiquitously, processes that help people move along. The four cornerstones and 3 stages of development model is one that CDS led for the food co-op startup system. It's been used to open over 150 grocery stores in the United States, and they have a 5-year success rate of over 65%, which is a small business success rate that I think is highly admirable, in fact, outstanding. But it shows the value when multiple people begin to collaborate and think through what are systems and approaches so that we're not always dealing with one-offs. Because Leslie had been a part of our work with the food co-op community and was familiar with the 4 cornerstones and 3 stages model, it led us to a conversation around how might this model approach be used with community investment co-ops. So Charlotte, you and Leslie took that on. Let's go to the next slide and take the story back. You're on mute.
Thank you. Okay, so visual roadmap was created, and what I will say about this, on the link that's at the bottom, there's a video that we did a webinar that really goes into this in a lot more depth. There's a PowerPoint, and so if you want to look more about that from that site, but it really organizes it by organizing, planning, implementing, and sustaining. What I will tell you, and go to the next slide, please, is that on this, using this roadmap, it really helps Beatrice in their conversations. It's like they were trying to explain about the real estate investment cooperative to others, but once they started doing this, it was where people could see where they were at, what they were trying to do, and moving forward of how they get to that collective decision making. And so this is one of the tools that we created, and we do have a draft guide. And I do want to say that Cooperation Works has a work group right now that we're continuing to work on things. And Autumn, Nicole, all of us are part of what this might look like, and all building tools that can help move forward. One other slide I want to show you on a tool is the next slide, please, is what we call a project analyzer. And this is a multi-sheet sheet that can help people in the process of thinking about that, of what their costs will be and so forth. Using Beatrice again as their example, they had a couple properties in mind that they thought for sure were going to be the tools that they used. And once they started completing this and filling it out, they recognized that those were not the properties that they should be looking at for a cooperative approach. And instead are looking at other possibilities in the future. These tools, this one is not available on the website, but if you email, we will share. We've piloted it, but because we're in a pilot, I'd really like to keep track of it so we can make improvements if there's anything that needs changed. Next slide, please. And this is back to Kevin.
Yeah, thanks, Charlotte. So the 4th stage of the model talks about how do we sustain both the organization as well and the specific projects, as well as the ongoing energy and fervor for the work. Remembering that much of this work is being done by volunteers. It's being based in a desire for community improvement, aggregation of capital at a non-maximal rate of return. So we don't have money that really encourages or entices or incentivizes activity. What we find is that in this sustaining period, number one, if you're going to own property, you need to be a great landlord. You actually want to be selective about the kinds of businesses that you aggregate and support. You need to make sure that you are taking care of your responsibilities in that relationship. You particularly need to take care of the people who are leading that effort. And so this whole sense of being prepared for the management transition and leadership transitions that go on, particularly in volunteer boards. And then that sense of retaining vision, that if indeed vision for something better than what we have now is a part of the motivation for this work, then keeping that vision vital and refreshed and forward-looking is a critical part of providing sustainability. Next slide, please. So our last slide talks about our things that we have learned. And as we noted, that we're still uncovering and discovering the ways that community investment can be used and the purposes to which it can be put. I would say that our colleagues in Canada are discovering more and more of those, and that's a huge source of inspiration for me personally. I was just talking about the role of volunteers. That both brings community, it's rooted in community, but it also brings the limitations of keeping volunteers engaged, motivated, and supported. But that commitment of people is absolutely critical. This is needs to be rooted in community. If it becomes too narrowly focused, it loses its appeal. This sense of who are the members and how do they directly benefit, that needs to get unpacked. Charlotte, would you like to take and speak to the last ones?
Okay, thanks, Kevin. Just the initial projects change the local landscape to make next projects more difficult. And Kevin didn't talk about this, but in NEIC, they did have a hard time finding other properties because of that. But trust is critical for success. And I think I've always, you saw that and you're investing in it is. And I'm going to take this from Paul. We have a quote at the end of this slide because of him. And you emphasize that so many times, and it's something I've witnessed, and that's why it's one of our lessons learned. And then again, focus on building the social value, the community value, and it goes back again to what the benefit it is. It's for everyone. And starting with a smaller deal first, success breeds success. If it's too lofty and you can't achieve it, it's going to be much harder. And I think you're going to hear that from Autumn and Nicole as well. And I think because of an interest in moving on, we're going to move the next slide. And thank you so much for USDA in hosting this. And there's Kevin and my email addresses.
Perfect. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Charlotte. That is a great overview of this interesting use of the cooperative model. So next up, we will have Autumn Vogel. She is a co-op developer with the Keystone Development Center, and Autumn has lived in Meadville, Pennsylvania since she graduated from Allegheny College in 2015. And she really got her foot into the wonderful world of co-ops through the establishment of the Northwest Pennsylvania Investment Cooperative. So we're excited to have Autumn here, and one of the many reasons is it's her birthday today, and she's sharing it with us. So without further ado, Autumn.
Wow, thanks, Margaret. That's very kind of you. Yes, I'm Autumn Vogel. I'm a cooperative developer with Keystone Development Center and came into that through my involvement with the Northwest Pennsylvania Investment Co-op. I was part of the founding board, and I now serve as the board president for NewPick. We do our work in Meadville, Pennsylvania, very much like Beatrice, Nebraska. We are a small town, consider a rural community, about 13,000 people in northwestern PA. We can advance to the next slide. Thank you. So we got our start in organizing in 2016 and incorporated in 2017. Like Charlotte was explaining around the community DIY model, thanks for dropping those. We were able to, we were really seeing an uptick in activity in our downtown and a real interest in small business development and support that took shape in the position that I held as community development coordinator for the city of Meadville's redevelopment authority. Priorities from our city leadership at the time. We had grant programs for entrepreneurs who were starting a business and some competitive opportunities for that. We had lots of programs, and what we were finding though, right, was that, you know, it was great to be able to support people, but if they didn't have enough capital up front to build out the spaces that they needed in a lot of our old and aging commercial building stock, it wasn't working. So we were giving grants, we were giving loans, and finding that a lot of folks, those grants and loans were just going towards paying rent or getting the building ready and built to suit, and we're going truthfully to a small handful of landlords who didn't live in our community. That was a big piece of it as well. So we wanted to continue to support the the good work that was happening in our town to support local people who wanted to be able to make a living and support their families in our community. And we were exploring different ways to do that. I appreciate those that spectrum of flavors that was presented, because we weren't sure what shape that would take. And so a group of us started organizing and got behind Michael Reed, pictured here, and his wife Tanya, who had a coffee bar in our public market house. Some of you in the call have seen our market house. So they had a coffee bar, wanted a coffee shop. Everyone in town desired a coffee shop. We did not have one for a long time, but they did not have the capital to get started. So we organized behind them. We got a successful Kiva campaign for $10,000 that they thought would serve as the down payment for a larger loan, but they were denied that larger loan. But they went full steam ahead anyway and opened up Taro Bean Roasting Company, which they lovingly referred to as their 10K Cafe, kind of pictured here in its early stages. And the next slide, you can see they were in operation for a few years and now are here. So we have French Creek Coffee and Tea now. They were in operation for a few years, and a regular who was retired from his machine shop decided to just start dabbling in community investment, and he was able to single-handedly get them into this space. And we want that to be true for more people in town, but we don't have that very generous benefactor for all of the businesses, that we want to see flourish. So we rolled up our sleeves and decided that we would start our own cooperative so that we could kind of enable this for more people in our community. Next slide, please. So there comes the Northwest Pennsylvania Investment Cooperative. Our mission is to buy, renovate, and lease high quality commercial properties to local folks in Meadville, Pennsylvania. Next slide. And in doing so, we hope to accelerate our local economy and build our community. You can advance again. Again, folks on this call know, we are a cooperative. We are a for-profit cooperative corporation in Pennsylvania. That means each member gets a vote with their member share. Next slide. And we are for profit. And for us, that was important for a few reasons. First of all, it does give the investors that we have an opportunity for a modest financial return. It is patient. It's a patient investment. We make that very clear to folks. It's part of what they sign when they sign on. Like, you're not going to get rich quick. You probably also won't get rich, but you might see some return. And this year will be the first year we are able to provide to pay out dividends to our members. The other reason that it's important for us to be for profit is because our buildings stay on the tax rolls. That's a helpful thing. Like Beatrice, we're the county seat of our county. There's about half of the properties in Meadville are not on the tax rolls. They're tax exempt. And that puts a real burden on our local government, which is heavily reliant on property taxes to operate. So we're kind of part of the solution. We're situating ourselves intentionally that way. Next slide. Our membership, I saw there was some conversation in the chat about SEC regulations, and we have, I think we took this note from NEIC, but because we only, our membership is limited to Pennsylvania residents who are 18 and older, and we are, what we solicit is just the membership share to the cooperative. We've been able to skate by that. We do, though, and I'll get to this on the next slide, I think we do offer the preferred accelerator shares with a preferred dividend. We also allow for institutional memberships. So any Pennsylvania-based business, nonprofit, or other organization can join in as well. They can appoint a voting member. I believe the stipulation, though, is that they just cannot serve on our board of directors. But they can be a part of the cooperative and a voting part of the cooperative, again, because we do have so many social services, churches, college, hospitals, right, who do, want to invest in our community. We're trying to kind of give them an option for investing in real estate that doesn't take properties off the tax roll. So that's provision laws for that. And our membership share is a $500 initial membership share cost. And as I mentioned, we do, once you join the cooperative, we are able to offer Class C and D accelerator shares that see the preferred dividend. Allows us to just scale up more quickly. Next slide, please. And so I mentioned before when I said that, we were able to pay dividends this year. We hope, we think, and that is because we have successfully seen our first project. It took a while. Again, you remember in my first slide, we incorporated in 2017, and it wasn't until 2021, fall of 2021, that we purchased a property. We spent the winter renovating it, and we welcomed Blissful Meads, a meadery, processing, production space, and retail and tasting room. We welcomed them into this space. They opened June of last year. They just celebrated their 1-year anniversary. And we have a community organization with offices on the 2nd floor. So we are proud to bring mead to Meadville, Pennsylvania. And to speak to Fred's question here, we are able to, it does say, it stipulates in our bylaws that it is up to board's discretion, but we have to be in the black, right? So we have to have actually made a profit, right? We had enough in the coffers, we had enough capital, but we hadn't made enough in profit over the course of the year to be able to issue dividends prior. So next slide, please. Yeah, and then a little bit of what's next for us. Again, we did just successfully kind of complete this project. And we are working on a lot of those pieces in that sustaining slide. We're trying really hard to be good landlords. We're working on our systems. We're growing our membership right now. We're in the midst of a membership drive. I think our current numbers, we're at 61 members of our cooperative, and we're hoping to get to 100 by the end of our membership drive. We'll see if we're successful. We're also working on some facade improvements. We've got a partnership with Allegheny College, which is in Meadville, some of their students to do a mural on the side of the building. They're funding a local artist to be able to do that. We're working on some plans for energy retrofitting of our space, and we've been approached at this point by other entrepreneurs in places whose landlords aren't as community minded or as interested in their business's success, and so we are looking towards next projects to see if we might be able to take on more properties and serve as the landlord for more folks. And the next slide, I think we were asked to just speak maybe quickly to our touch points with USDA. And so I will quickly do that. We did not get, I'm now a cooperative developer with Keystone Development Center. We didn't know about Keystone Development Center at the time of our organizing. So we didn't get help organizing from KDC, but we've been able to tap in to resources since. So we've put members through some cooperative education and training, and we've been able to take part of the network. KDC very much is reliant on our USDA's RCDG. I mentioned the energy retrofitting we're trying to do to the building. We're looking at REAP for that. It's tough. REAP is tough with energy retrofits. It's geared a little more towards the clean energy development, but we are working on that, and we've explored some other options. The cooperative model, it's nice to see that included as an eligible applicant in more programs, because that's been prohibitive, right? We're not making a lot of money, but we are for profit, and so that's been tough, right? I think RBDG, right, we're excluded from that, but we've explored some options. And with that, I think that my time is up, and I hand it over to Nicole. Is that right?
Well, I'll go ahead and thank you so much. That was wonderful, wonderful, Autumn. I'm going to quickly introduce Nicole. Nicole Berner is a cooperative specialist and workforce coordinator with the Montana Cooperative Development Center. Nicole has served on elected boards at both the city and county levels in her home region of Montana. She is the chair of the first investment cooperative in Montana, the Musselshell Rural Investment Cooperative, and active with other community investment initiatives. So without further ado, Nicole.
Hi, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Okay, thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm excited for this opportunity to talk about the work that we do at the Montana Cooperative Development Center. My name is Nicole, and again, I work for the Montana Cooperative Development Center. My focus of work is on investment cooperatives, worker conversions, and broadband awareness. And thank you, Margaret, for this opportunity, and to the USDA Cooperative Interagency Working Group for hosting this really great event. Next slide, please. So MCDC is a 501c3 statewide economic development organization. We serve all 56 counties and 7 Native American reservations. We build new cooperatives and support existing cooperatives in all the industry. And we're also the administrators for the Montana Council of Cooperatives, which is a statewide trade association. Next slide, please. So we have 6 fabulous staff members, and we serve the entire state of Montana. And our motto is, we can co-op that. Next slide, please. So this is the project. This is one of the 2 projects that I'm going to be talking about today that we have done. So Musselshell Rural Investment Cooperative is Montana's first investment cooperative. This cooperative is established to buy into the developers project and to preserve the historic school, which you guys see there in the photo. I was a founding member of the cooperative, and I'm currently the chair of the cooperative. So in 2014, the community passed a school bond to build a modern school and demolish that historic central school that you see there. A group of citizens and leaders who were already working on economic resiliency for our rural community, myself included, wanted to save the school. So we approached the school board and asked for an opportunity to find a way to save the building. And the school gave us 3 years to find a way to save it, as long as we didn't use any public funds. The members from that group went on to form the steering committee. So just a little bit about Musselshell County. We are located 50 miles north of Montana's largest city, which is Billings, Montana. We're a boom and bust coal town, with agriculture being the other largest economic driver. And the population of my county is around 4,800. Coal mining in the Bull Mountains began in 1908 and continued until the last major mine closed in 1956. The Milwaukee Railroad pulled out of this community in the 1970s, and we had been in an economic decline for 5 decades at that point. In 2009, the coal mine opened back up. Signal Peak contributes to over 33% of the total budget for Musselshell County, and we are almost still entirely dependent on the coal mine for revenue and for higher paying jobs. So Musselshell County had already faced a housing shortage long before the coal mine even opened back up in 2009. And approximately 2/3 of the workforce and the higher paying management jobs were filled by individuals who didn't even reside in Musselshell County, partly because we didn't have the housing for them, but we also didn't have amenities because we had been in such a sharp economic decline for so long in our community. So the loss of that was the potential tax base that we could have received, and it also skewed our area median income. So the purpose of this cooperative and the economic development work that we were doing was to preserve the historic school, create affordable quality housing, and then also be an anchor project for economic vitality and resiliency in our little community. And the group of us that were working on this project had learned about the Sangudo Opportunity Development Cooperative, and we became really interested in this model, and we were also already working with our local regional economic development organization, which is the Snowy Mountain Development Corporation. And Snowy Mountain helped us connect with the Montana Cooperative Development Corporation for the investment cooperative model. And then from that, a group of us attended a Innovate Montana Symposium, where we met with an architect who specialized in historic renovation. So after we kind of knew the direction that we might want to go in our initial contact with the Montana Cooperative Development Corporation, we formed a formal steering committee. And then in collaboration with a local volunteer group, which was dedicated to revitalizing Roundup, we initiated a pretty robust series of public discussions. And these discussions involved engaging the architect, who is the developer of the project, community leaders, and the public. And the primary objectives behind these conversations were twofold. First was to generate awareness about the renovation project and the importance of saving the historic school into affordable housing and commercial space. And the second was we had to do a lot of education. So the second reason we had these conversations was to educate the public and other community leaders on the significance of economic development and historic preservation, and then also to raise awareness of the cooperative business model. Change the slide, please. So the goal of our community was to invest in one share of the developer's project. So the initial beginnings of this was to raise money to be able to be a part of the cooperative of the developer's project. The renovation costs were estimated at about $3 million at that time. This was back in 2017, 2018. One share of the developer's project to buy in was $25,000. We had set common and preferred stock both at $1,000, and our official goal and hope was to be able to raise enough shares for 2 shares. But we had some pretty significant challenges to overcome, and there were some successes from these community conversations as well. This was a really contentious project. It was a really contentious bond in the beginning to pass even the school bond. But a lot of people just wanted to walk away from the school and tear it down. And after our conversations, a lot of people were excited that we wanted to save the school. They were excited about the project, but they just weren't willing to buy into the cooperative and be a member. So we were only able, and we were on a timeline. There was a timeline with the developer as well. So we were only able to raise enough money for one share. The co-op formed in 2018, but then the project stalled due to financing issues and COVID-19. But I'm happy to report that the renovation started this summer in 2023 and is moving forward. Change slide, please. So the second project that we've been doing here in Montana is in Wheatland County. It's the Upper Muscle Development Cooperative. And the community had been looking for a way to address affordable and respectable housing, specifically for their own community members, but also commercial real estate to attract businesses and entrepreneurs. And they were looking at the real estate investment cooperative model to do this. So Wheatland County has a population of about 2,000 people. It's a remotely located, pretty frontier community, with Billings being about 92 miles away, and then the next largest community, Great Falls, is about 129 miles away. It is also designated as a persistent poverty county. Wheatland County was once a railroad community as well. The Milwaukee pulled out of this community in the 1970s, and now the major industries are agricultural, and then there's kind of a burgeoning wind energy industry in that community. If you're ever there, the wind blows constantly. And this community faces a pretty scarcity of quality, affordable housing. and commercial real estate. They've had 2 really bad fires on a couple of their wonderful historic buildings in the last few years, which burnt them to the ground. And they were looking at the real estate investment cooperative model to collectively raise capital to renovate dilapidated housings and commercial space. So what happened was a few residents took part in a reimagining rural program that is through the Montana State University, and it's dedicated to community development in rural areas. And among the topics discussed at this particular event was the Muscle Rural Investment Cooperative, and as well as another investment cooperative that MCDC is working on in Baker, Montana. It's still in the very beginning stages though. And from that event, the group reached out to MCDC with the intention to learn more about the real estate investment cooperative business model. Then they shared what they learned with other fellow community members, which then led to the formation of a formal steering committee. And this group of people have a really great background in construction, real estate, business, and community engagement as well. And housing is their most important issue that they want to tackle, but especially after the recent rise in rental rates and housing costs, but they also would like to address the commercial real estate as well. And because housing is really important to them and affordability is important, MCDC connected this group with Trust Montana, which is a community land trust here in Montana that is committed to creating livable communities by preserving affordable land and homes. So the community, this committee is in the last stages of development, of incorporation, I mean. They've set their common stock at $100, and then they have 4 types of preferred stock. And a lot of rural communities want to keep their board members local. So that's why their common stock is which is local residents only. And then they have preferred stock, which is categorized by local resident and local business. And then they have other preferred stock, which is non-local resident and non-local business, because you can sell stock to Montana residents. And again, they're in their final stages of incorporating under the Upper Muscle Community Development Corporation. Oh, and I think I forgot to have you change slides, so I apologize about that. We could, yeah. And then change one more slide. Thank you. Sorry about that. And then just really quickly, I know we're focusing on real estate investment cooperatives today, but I just want to highlight that MCDC is also actively engaged in forming a couple community economic development investment funds throughout the state. And if we could change slides. And then just a couple thoughts on the challenges that we have been facing, that we have come across doing investment cooperative development in Montana rural communities. One of the things that we have found is it can be difficult for members to secure enough capital through stock offerings to meet their goals and as well as their business plan. Because these groups are asking other community members who already give to many causes and projects in the community, even though this is a community investment and not another donation, the members have found that they have to be really careful and aware of exhausting the limited pool of resources that you have in rural communities, as well as putting together a really good marketing plan of how they're going to go out and talk about the membership and what a cooperative is and what an investment cooperative is and why you would invest in your community. And from this problem, there's also a little bit of a challenge in recruiting board members. And as most of us know that work in rural communities, there's always kind of like the same 4 to 8 people who are typically the drivers of the community. So that can also be a challenge as they're kind of putting the initial beginning steps of creating the investment cooperative. So those are just some of the projects that we're doing in Montana, and then some of the challenges that we've come across. But I want to thank everybody for the opportunity to share about what we're doing and the projects that we're doing in Montana. So thank you.
Wonderful job, Nicole. Thank you. Thank you. It's fascinating to hear what's happening in frontier communities of Montana. This morning, I found out we are in for a treat. We'll get a Canadian perspective from Paul Sabai, who is based out of outside of Edmonton, Alberta, and he has been involved with a number of different real estate investment cooperatives. So without further ado, Paul, if you'd like to share some thoughts. Oops, and you're on mute.
I'm certainly happy to, Margaret. Just how much time do I have now?
Go ahead and take 5 or so minutes.
Okay. Yeah, I've just made some comments that might add to what people are looking at here based on your work and fantastic, inspiring work down in the U.S. around this piece. I guess overall, the DNA of these investment co-ops, real estate investment co-ops or otherwise, are quite similar for the broad front. There's been some variation over time, like any kind of evolution with certain features. And I'll just make some comments on that and how to kind of consider looking at scale, because that's having been working on these co-ops, including being the lead developer on the Sangudo project and having worked with maybe 30 different investment co-ops, you start to see some of the commonalities. And co-ops are really about aggregation, right? The world is about aggregation. We aggregate data, we aggregate finance. Local co-ops aggregate local finance and local social capital together. And what parts of those can you get even more economies of scale? A couple things I'll look at. There's some topology coming out about different kinds of co-ops. There's something that I see with these investment co-ops. There's kind of the active kind that have taken a more active role in the business on the management. And there's a more passive side that actually invests in the business but hands over management and control really to other individuals, another co-op, or take small portions of a variety of businesses. And there's obviously blends of those. And I think they're somewhat different and they require different kind of capacity and process around that. You know, and the big thing around these that comes up for a lot of people, and you start seeing lots of comments here in terms of the regulatory capacity, what can work around that. While this is still fairly experimental, there's enough experience out there that, particularly if you can talk with regulators, and I'm happy that it's just kind of federally kind of organized at this point, because that can actually be a key. Is if you're needing certain kinds of exemptions, if you have enough people asking for the same kind of thing, you can often quite get that. And so the co-ops shouldn't be afraid to not use their financial capital and local social capital, but their political capital as well too, as voters, for influencing ways that you can actually have more freedom around that. You know, the key factor around this, securities regulations, which maybe prevents you from doing some things, are there in place to prevent fraud. And we have done research in Canada on both US and Canadian securities history, and we did it again about a year ago on the number of cases of investment fraud perpetrated by co-ops, and there's been 0, right? And so there should be some leeway around that. We've certainly made some progress here in Canada around that, asking for particular blanket exceptions, and particularly if it's going to affect a number of communities, that can help. You can do that state by state or a group of states, so something to consider for making it a bit easier to make these work through and reduce some of the administrative burden around things. And another comment too is a lot of the comments you guys have talked about are rural. I've certainly worked on a number of those, Sangudo being one. There's actually, you can do this in an urban environment, as you've seen in Minnesota. The last several I've been involved in, including the building I'm in right now, which is a 60-year-old historic building, an old radio station. It's been completely renovated to a shared space. We're doing a $9 million share offer around that as kind of a form of a downtown revitalization. The big thing around that is that there's a thirst in this city for doing something for downtown revitalization. And so there's been several projects that have happened around that. Over in Calgary, they've got something local, it's called Local Invest YYC, which is the airport code. And they've actually accumulated money, and they're now, I think they've raised something like $7 million. And they make investments in a variety of kind of social enterprises and co-ops as a partner in that. Another key thing to think about too is you don't have to raise it all yourself. I think the example of the schools is one good example of that. I like to see that. You don't need to raise all the money. And in many cases now we're working with folks is raise 20, 30% to show significant local support. It's pretty clear out there. There's lots of money out there. Money's not the issue. It's the capacity and the focus and the strength of the people around. And you can often raise 20, 30% and approach other foundations. Several impact funds are out there. They're more growing every day that you can approach. We have the idea. We've got the local capacity. They're looking for deal flow, and you can work with them around that. which is why to kind of start to look at scale, right? Because there is a fair bit of transaction cost to that, and those transactions and that time actually also helps contribute to some of the burnout. And that's one of the biggest issues we see with investment co-ops, is, as been mentioned before, is you've got strong, dedicated leaders, they're putting more and more in, and there's only so much they can do. How do you actually reduce the administrative burden for them, not only for the cost of it, but the time, so they can do what they do well, know what the local community is, know what the local opportunities are, the capacity of local folks, and use their social capital to then galvanize at least some investment to move forth. So one of the areas we've been looking at for scale is looking, and this is based on discussions we've had with our securities commissions down here and some of the experts we've been working with, is almost taking like a mutual fund approach. So we still have the local co-ops. They identify the project, they want to put an investment in, and by the way, in Canada, and I think it's in some cases in the USA, we can basically use the equivalent of 401ks to invest in these local initiatives, and most people are transferring in from somewhere else. This will actually help increase that facility. So the idea of these mutual funds is, the mutual fund is actually the general partner on top. We have the local co-ops. They identify the projects, do the local due diligence, bring it to the mutual fund. The mutual fund actually makes the share offer on behalf of that co-op. It's the official offer. And then there's a sub-agent agreement with that local co-op to work on the additional work on that. What that does is significantly reduce the transaction costs, because the reporting for securities and other components, that the due diligence, all get aggregated at a higher level, and it's the stuff that doesn't have to be done local, right? What has to be done local is the social capital building, the connection, and building that trust. So they issue on behalf of them, and the project can proceed much more clearly. The other thing around that, because of this model we're moving towards, we're also getting lots of interest from some of these large mutual funds, other funds, and impact investment funds, pension funds, some of the provincial wealth funds, because they want to do other kinds of social impact, environmental impact, but they don't want to deal with small deals of $500,000. They want to deals with 100 million is even too small for them. So they're talking about working with us, providing us a pool of capital that we then can use to leverage some of these local opportunities. And so that opens up the imagination of what you can do, and you can consider much larger projects. So that's quite exciting. And we also see some kind of specialization around that. And there were some comments about how there's particular forms of co-op development, let's say it be a grocery store or housing or renewable energy. There's a capacity issue around that. And as many of you said, sometimes the local investment co-op board doesn't have all the expertise in the business they're looking into. Can you find that somewhere else? Can you get that somewhere else, particularly doing the due diligence on whether the business is viable or not on the long term? So the other iteration of that is we'll have specific types of funds, and we're looking at one for renewable energy, because actually the cost of doing renewable energy projects, there's lots of due diligence there, looking at market rates, the regulation is difficult. Can we actually amalgamate that together and support several local renewable energy projects to move at a much larger scale? A business succession fund that's specifically around the valuation of those businesses, what it could look like, evaluating the management capacity around that to help those move forward. And by having these specific funds, it lets people know that they have support of specific expertise and other additional money that they can leverage to move forth. Looking at a housing fund as well. Affordable housing fund, because of course that's hitting everyone across the world right now, and taking formal positions on that. You see a number of I would say probably a third of the housing co-op or the investment co-ops I know in Canada are now moving into that housing role, in terms of the first lender, the first in for getting mortgages around that. You're starting to get some expertise around that, particularly in the Kitchener-Waterloo area, very strong movement. And what you find with these investment co-ops, and this has been talked to before, because people are finally doing something, they're coming together and addressing a problem and showing you can trust and work together. Not only do they have influence in terms of people getting money in, they start to have influence politically, and in a way that shows it's not left or right, it's up. You know, it's not a left spectrum or right spectrum politics, it's up for the community. And it's pretty interesting to see that start to happen as it's beginning to mature. So I'm enjoying seeing that. So that's one example of where it could go. I'm really encouraged by what you folks are doing here. I encourage you to think at scale now. You're still in some experimentation stages, but some are just as vibrant and in some ways more than what we see in Canada. Think about the levels of maybe a federation or supports you can actually bring at a higher level for all those components that don't have to be done at the local level. the legal, the due diligence, the securities negotiations, in some ways, some of the lobbying as well too, that you might want to do, and if you want exemptions or working with various regulators. So I'll leave my comments at that and maybe give more room for questions later.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Paul. Thank you, Paul, for those comments and for that perspective. We're always inspired by what's going on in Canada. So we are so thrilled that Dr. Joseph Blasi from Rutgers University is able to join us. He has been participating in a number of our interagency working group webinars, and we finally have the opportunity to hand the floor over to him to tell us about some of the exciting work that he is doing with the U.S. Treasury Department with the State Small Business Credit Initiative. So, Dr. Blasi, without further ado.
Thank you very much, Margaret, and Megan and Dr. Neal and all the members of the Agricultural Department cooperative programs. I'm going to try to share my screen here, and I hope I will be successful in doing so. Let's just take a second and do that.
Robbie may not. Okay.
Or if you'd like me to share your, was it your fact sheet that you wanted to? Okay, I can pull that up if it's easier for you. That's not a problem.
It's easier because my computer is telling me all kinds of things that I don't want to hear.
Okay, let me reshare then. Give me just a few seconds to get that back up. All right, and here we go. Hopefully this is what you wanted, I believe.
Yes, that's what I wanted.
Okay.
And, so if you could just go up just a little bit, yeah, right there. And so I've been asked to speak for about 20 minutes. I'll make sure that we end on time, and happy to be interrupted if I have to end sooner. So I thought I'd divide this into three parts. One is the general background on the Department of Treasury's program that involves employee-owned and worker-owned firms. And then secondly, talk a little bit about more of the detail on the program. And then thirdly, answer some more of your questions. So let me just give a general overview. I don't want to be talking for 20 minutes straight, so I'll talk for 2 or 3 minutes, and I'll ask Margaret and Megan to just sort of stop me, and we'll take questions from the chat or from whoever wants to ask questions, and then I'll go on for another 2 or 3 minutes. So I'm just not going on and on. So as you know, as part of the and I just want to say I'm speaking today with my Treasury hat on. I'm advisor to the U.S. Treasury Department on this program, and so I'm talking with the approval of my colleagues at the Treasury Department. So there may be some questions I can't answer, but I'll do my best. So as part of the American Rescue Plan Act, there was the creation of the State Small Business Credit Initiative. This initiative existed under President Barack Obama's administration, but at that time it was much smaller, and it did not allow for the credit to be used for the financing of worker co-ops or ESOPs or employee-owned trusts or any kind of employee-owned entity. When this became law, Congress asked the Treasury to open up the program to ESOPs, worker co-ops, and other employee-owned entities. And in the end, the program was opened up to ESOPs, employee stock ownership plans, worker co-ops, and employee ownership trusts. While the regulations talk about other employee-owned entities, at this point, Treasury hasn't defined what these other employee-owned entities might actually be. So again, just the general overview, there's $10 billion in credit to support companies under 500 employees with maximum loans up to $5 million. This program is not only for employee-owned and worker-owned entities. It's for all small businesses. But I think what's new about it is it provides an opportunity for credit financing for worker-owned and employee-owned entities in all 50 states, Indian tribes, and territories. This is essentially a block grant program where the $10 billion has been distributed among all the 50 states, Indian tribes, and territories, and their local economic development officials are running it. So basically speaking, Treasury distributes the funds, makes the rules, and handles the compliance. So I'm working at the Washington level. I'm not working on any specific deals at the community level. What I think is really interesting about this program is that, give you an example, California, for example, as a large state, has received $1 billion in credit financing. It's a very big number. And as those loans are made and then paid back, that $1 billion will remain in California under the economic development agencies that are administering it on behalf of the governor, and they can then be reused. So I know there's been a lot of times in the worker ownership and employee-owned community where there's been this talk about, revolving loan funds and such. This has a potential for that, because as the loans are repaid, the states will, as it were, recirculate them. And in fact, credit is being recirculated from the program that existed under the Obama administration, although that credit was not allowable for employee-owned entities. So I'll just stop there for a minute and see if Margaret or Megan want to direct any questions to me.
Yes, we have a question from Shar Varizi at Cooperative Development Services. Shar, if you want to unmute yourself. And if you look up in the upper right-hand corner, we're
Yep, I'm good.
There you go.
We're good. Thanks, Margaret. Hi, Dr. Blasi. Thanks so much for being part of this wonderful presentation. We're a cooperative development center that covers Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Iowa, and our executive director, that's part of the small business initiative, or excuse me, the small business economic development with the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development in Minnesota, stated that the TA portion of the grant program only applies to, and I'll get her email, only applies to direct one-on-one legal and accounting technical assistance. Is that your understanding? I mean, is there other technical assistance that can be used with those funds?
Yeah, let me answer that first by saying that the technical assistance part of this program didn't exist in the past under the Obama administration, and so it's being built from the ground up, and the technical assistance funds are just now starting to go out to the states and other entities. My colleagues at Treasury have made clear that the technical assistance funds need to be related to a specific deal where an entity, say a co-op or ESOP, is going through a worker conversion and intends to bring about an employee buyout conversion. There's a little bit of squishiness there because it's the intention. It's possible that the deal might not eventually go through, but they're looking for sort of a good faith effort that there is actually a conversion underway. I should say that, as I mentioned, the technical assistance program is just getting set up, and we're turning our focus to it. And I don't have any examples of the technical assistance having been applied, although we do know that ESOP loans and co-op loans are going through the system right now. So if you want to email me, I think Megan or Margaret can put my email, my Treasury email, in the chat, and I can get back with you about some details and put you in touch with our outreach person for Minnesota.
Great. Thank you for that, Joseph. Another question came in from Fred. Oops, and I just lost track of the question here. Do you have an idea of how much, approximately what percentage of the funds are already committed to projects? And he assumes that that varies by state.
Yeah, I don't have those numbers right now, but let me say that the program has just started out, and the funds have been committed to the states, but the number of credit and loan projects, they're just starting to happen. We're hearing of individual ones across the country in different states, but this program spent most of the last year getting set up, most of the last 6 months getting the money out to the states, and now the states are getting themselves organized. And we recently had a meeting at the Federal Reserve Bank in Atlanta with all the states in the southeastern part of the United States, and they were all up and running, but just starting to move transactions through the system.
Okay. So would this be a good time for those of us in the co-op community to be reaching out to our respective states to help educate them about the opportunities of cooperatives, especially worker cooperatives?
Absolutely. And because worker cooperatives and ESOPs and employee-owned trusts were not part of the earlier system, some state officials are not aware of the changes and have not done a sample transaction. So one of the, you might say, one of the advantages of this is it's going to be an opportunity for the local ESOP and co-op and employee ownership entities to interact with state officials in a collaborative manner to educate each other and to begin to use this program. So what if I then go into sort of the second part and kind of go into another level of detail? And thank you very much for advancing the slide. So as I said, the main rules are that the company needs to be less than 500 employees, and the maximum loan is $5 million. There is a part of the program which focuses on VSBs, very small businesses. So there are a lot of these loans tend to be like the loans that we commonly hear about on these calls for cooperative transactions, for smaller and medium cooperative transactions. The main rule is that at the end of the deal, and these are, I think, virtually all worker conversions from retiring business owners, typically. At the end of the deal, the company must be more than majority employee owned, and that's really quite basic here. However, it's important to note that the funds, as noted in the guidelines, can be used for working capital and, relevant to our call today, real estate transactions, as long as it's not passive real estate transactions. And recently, the Treasury lawyers have agreed that the funds can be used for the merger of the worker-owned and a non-worker-owned business, or two worker-owned businesses. So there's a good deal of flexibility here. I think that I'll just talk about the 4 ways in which the credit is made available, and each state or Indian tribe or territory emphasizes which of these 4 or all of them it wants to use. So 1, it's possible to request a loan guarantee up to $5 million, a participation by the state program in a loan up to $5 million. Portfolio insurance, which is interesting, where a portfolio of loans can be insured. It's a little complicated. I'm not going to get into describing it now, but the idea of insuring portfolios of loans for employee-owned businesses is something that's been talked about in theory, and here, possibility of it actually happening in practice. And collateral support programs. As many of you know, many worker conversion transactions involve service companies that, unlike hard metal or steel companies or manufacturing plants, don't have a lot of hard capital that can be used by banks as a basis for giving loans. And this program can involve some collateral support programs. So we're going to see different transactions like that, go through the system and start to emerge. But as I said, this is just really at the beginning. It's just we're just starting to see transactions. Yep, Margaret, you emphasized it. The educational process and sharing of information between local groups, whether they're lawyers, accountants, business owners, or nonprofit co-op groups or nonprofit institutions or state employee ownership centers or any of those kinds of institutions, talking to the state officials is important. The Treasury website has a list of the state officials and the contacts, and I will ask Megan if you can post the link to the Treasury program. If you want to find the link, just search for Treasury and SSBCI, and immediately will come up a list of the state officials and the contacts. Treasury has designated a number of outreach coordinators for all of the different states and Indian tribes and territories, and their names will be at the bottom of the list if you want to contact them, or you can contact me, and I can put you in touch with them. The outreach coordinators are there to help the conversation to begin, the collaboration to begin, and make sure that all of the availability for worker conversions, all of that information is getting out to the different states. Yeah.
Good. Thank you, Joseph. We are running close to the end of time. If people are able to stay on the webinar, we will continue, especially for the question and answer session. Joseph, would it be appropriate to have Ron Hance ask you a question now, or do you want to say a few more words and then have Ron speak?
No, that's fine. I will just ask if you could just advance my PDF just a little bit more to the next section. Actually, great. Yes. Okay, that's fine. I'll take the next question.
Okay, Ron, go ahead if you can unmute yourself.
Thank you. I'd like to know, what is the criteria for worker cooperative, whether a startup or sustained worker cooperative? Is there some criteria that they have to meet in terms of being in existence for a certain amount of years? Some balances on their balance books or sheets or what?
No, those criteria don't exist. Although let me say that because the program is focusing essentially on worker conversions to worker cooperatives and ESOPs, I think it's important to know in context that we see very, very few startups in the context of worker conversions, and so the deal would have to have to prove that it makes financial sense. And as you know, startups in the area of employee ownership or worker co-ops or ESOPs, have a very hard time dealing with that time period of infancy. So really, the program I think will largely be focused on existing companies where an existing owner, likely a retiring business owner, will sell to that group of workers in that company who will form a worker cooperative or an ESOP or an employee ownership trust to buy it. I think it's not likely to be used for startups. You might notice that on this flyer that I've distributed, Treasury also has another big part of this program for venture-backed investments. Is it possible that experts in the worker cooperative or ESOP community will figure out how to use venture-backed investments for a worker-owned startup? that's possible, but it's not something that I've seen, come through the system yet.
Very good. Thank you. Go ahead, Dr. Blasi.
Okay, so if you could just please scale up a little bit more. Okay, so I think that I could just make two very quick points here since I want to stay close to your time. You can see what the uses of the credit can be, and it can also be used for acquisition of equipment, inventory or services, and the purchase, construction, renovation of businesses, as long as it's not passive real estate. Now, in the next section, we give information on the different state contacts in the states, the Indian tribes, and the territories. And let me say, probably the most important piece of information on this sheet is the very last line, that email, because what this program has done is established one email for all questions. So if you have a question, just like the one you just asked, Ron, if you have a question, send it here, and it will be distributed to the legal team to respond, or sent to the appropriate person to respond. Or if you're having trouble contacting your Treasury outreach officer for your state, we can deal with that too. And obviously, I'm happy to help direct some traffic if needed. I'll just end by saying this program is just starting, and it's going to be interesting to see if it can realize some potential. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Blasi. And actually, a question did come in that I think your background, you might be able to address this. It's from Fred, and he says, for some reason, there does seem to be a broad-based impression that worker co-op startups are riskier than investor-owned business startups. But as far as I'm aware, this isn't supported by research or on-the-ground experience. In the Pacific Northwest, we definitely do see a lot more willingness to finance conversion of businesses than startups, even when the converting business is marginal and the startup project is a slam dunk. So, Dr. Blasi, you've had years of experience in doing this type of research. Your thoughts?
Okay, well, since I'm speaking today with my Treasury hat on, I'm not going to make a statement on the record about these different businesses. Be happy to do that in an academic seminar someday, but not today. Thank you very much, though, for the question.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So very good. Well, thank you. A most sincere thank you, Dr. Blasi. We've so appreciated you coming to all these webinars, and we're thankful that you've finally had an opportunity to share a little bit with your Treasury hat on with us today.
Thank you for inviting me, and what the Department of Agriculture is doing is a fantastic program. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, we are at time, but if people are willing to stay on the line, we can have a discussion. If anyone wants to pose questions to any of the speakers, or if people just want to make a comment. So if people are interested, go ahead and raise your hand. Fred, go ahead from the Pacific Northwest. If you can unmute yourself. Fred, I think there you go.
Sorry, for somebody who does online meetings professionally, you'd think I'd. The question is, and somebody kind of asked this in the chat, so like how much support or how much of the development process is coming from the community group and how much are they having to pay outside technical assistance providers. But I think what I'm more specifically curious about is for the actual like development agency, and it sounds like a lot of the experience for people was starting as a community leader, putting together the project, and then getting involved with a development agency. But I'm wondering from the cooperative developer perspective, how are these have these been light touch projects, intensive development projects, and then like specifically where development centers plugged in the most?
Do you want to direct that question to anyone or just whoever wants to?
I think anyone with an answer.
Go ahead, Kevin.
So I've worked in 5 communities with different, in very different stages of development. It is almost exclusively dependent on the acumen, the connections, the leadership that's available within a community. From a developer's, from a co-op developer standpoint, I think the biggest things that we offer, number one, are connections to inspiration. It's like, who else is doing something similar so that you can network, you can study what they have done. Perhaps we're starting to get to the point of finding some things that don't work so well or practices that aren't quite so great. So, we can do some coaching that way. Then connecting state law, because we're dealing with investments, issues of securities registration come up, and connecting to legal providers that can figure out how to properly structure it in the state that it's located in, avoid the national and state regulatory issues to the extent possible, etc. And then we haven't had, so most of these have been relatively self-financed in terms of generating the equity, the member equity, and then that capital leverages more traditional debt or other sources. We haven't found too many in our experience that are solely community supported all the way through. Most have to get they leverage their equity to get some form of debt, and then that gets paid off as the project moves through. So that's been our experience, but I certainly, I see Paul's got a comment. I'd defer to anything that he has to say.
This session is getting too good for my ego. You could stop that now, Kevin. But, I would agree completely with what Kevin said. It certainly depends on the acumen of the group. However, going back to the issue of scale, where we've been able to make some advances is on some of the technical issues. So often these groups will depend on local lawyers or accountants who may not know the regulations or the process or been involved in this. So a couple of things. We started actually a legal firm, which was able to provide this, who had deep knowledge and almost templated the process, which made it easier. So the cost of setting this up traditionally, it used to be $12,000, $15,000. We now got it to less than $5,000, including the incorporation and the basic offering document for the smaller raises. So that's one thing where scale, and even on a state level, that kind of expertise doesn't have to be local. You can still involve local people, and often these groups will have a lawyer or accountant on board who understand the basics. But looking at amalgamating that maybe at the state level, where you have legal and accounting representation who can bring those transaction costs down, can be very useful. And whether that's supported by a local development agency or the group themselves, it depends on the size of the project.
Charlotte.
Fred, my perspective is really the same as Kevin on a lot, except that if you haven't created an investment cooperative before, I really think it's good that you stay connected so that you can see and learn with the group, and where we were real fortunate, we were able to contract with Leslie, and then you talk to others. I was involved a lot with Beatrice, but not doing the work, but kind of watching, observing, and touch points. But that's to learn more about Nebraska's laws, the challenges in our rural communities, because every single community and region of this country is different. And how the terminology that we used, words that were used in Minnesota, we changed and edited to fit more appropriately, at least in Beatrice. I'm not going to say even in some of ours in Montana, that's a frontier county, as Margaret said, the words we used in Beatrice may not have been acceptable in our frontier counties. So I think being that type of person to really help them communicate is important in my mind, as a developer, is helping them communicate and letting it be their idea too. It really is their idea. It's not ours.
great thread, and it was interesting. There was a very active chat throughout this webinar, and we hope to capture the conversations going on in the chat to be included with the recording. But it was interesting that Sarah Kaplan, who is an attorney, I believe, out of Chicago, said that she and others are very interested in this area of expertise, and they were asking questions of this group of how did you go ahead and incorporate? What did you see working best? So I think the bottom line is I think we're all learning from each other, and it's good to stay in contact with one another. Kevin, go ahead.
So one of the other observations that I've made is the importance to look at what structures do we have, what legal structures do we have for carrying out this kind of work. And I'm particularly have become enamored of the work of CDIFs, Community Economic Development Investment Funds, and local tax credits, the capacity in Canada for using retirement accounts as a source of community capital. To some extent, in our it's right-minded attempts to prevent fraud and consumer scamming, we actually have made it a little challenging to become small business owners in a cooperative strategy or leveraging community capital. So looking for ways and policy innovations that can be, whether they get tested first on the local level and then incorporated at larger levels, or however we're going to go about doing that. But to pay attention, in my mind, particularly to the work that has been done in Canada, that is being done in some places in the United States, and looking at what are the tools that we have to use and how can we either tweak, rewrite, or create the new vehicles that can be used for advancing this kind of work. Our securities issues, I don't want to say that they're bad or that they're a problem, but they do impose certain kinds of limitations and constraints. And sometimes that's workable and sometimes it's a pain in the somewhere else. Thank you.
And I've been trying to monitor the chat, but did we answer everybody's question that provided one in the chat? I know
Terry,
Megan and Debbie.
I think you had a comment earlier.
Oh, Terry, you're on mute. If you look in the upper right-hand corner, close to the leave button.
It looks like a microphone.
Yeah.
I'm
there.
Sorry. Okay. Okay.
Okay. Sorry. Teams
Sorry.
is the pain.
Okay. Any other last comments or observations? Well, with that, thank you. Oh, Charlotte, Charlotte, go ahead.
Sorry, I just had one last question, I guess, and this is with Dr. Blasey, where, he had to wear his USDA hat, since I'm sure this is a USDA seminar. Treasury, yeah,
hat,
or not Treasury, not USDA, but still a federal government. Are you able at this time to, maybe if we want to have a webinar sometime where we learn more about your research and what you've been doing, talk to a group of people? Or is that right now, while you're doing consulting, probably something you're not able to do? I'm just curious.
I think he may have stepped off.
Oh, well, that makes it easy then for him to answer.
We could certainly ask him. He's with Treasury, but he was with Rutgers previously. So he's speaking with his Treasury hat on these days.
And he has stepped off. And Terry, you should be unmuted at this point.
No. Oh.
Okay. Sorry, I tried.
Yeah, darn microphone setups. Yes. Okay.
Okay. So, well, very good. Well, thank you, everyone. This has been a fascinating conversation. You could tell there are a lot of passionate people who are making innovative use of the cooperative model. And that's one thing that just excites me about this field, a lot of passion and a lot of innovation. So thank you to all of our speakers. And thank you to all the people that participated. And don't forget, we have our final in the series for this year coming up on October 13th. Oh, Terry, there you go.
I changed my microphone settings, and all I wanted to say is that we've been very focused on the SSBCI program at C2VE. And it is entirely possible to use the very small business TA grant and the money to set up a worker co-op from scratch in Michigan. I can't tell you that that's the same in every state, but in Michigan, it is very much the case, and it may be in your state as well. Done.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you. That was worth that was worth the effort to change your microphone setting. Thank you for doing that, Terry. Fred, did you want to go ahead?
Yeah, sorry, Terry. I guess how do you know that, and what was the process for getting them to say yes to that? If you see my question.
When we were putting together our TEA grant application, we asked the question of MEDC, which is our Michigan, that's the agency that's in charge in Michigan, and we got a very clear answer.
And I think this begs it's an opportunity. I view this as an educational opportunity for each of us in our respective states, tribal communities, to reach out to these state government agencies and help educate them about what is a cooperative, what is the power of a worker cooperative, what are the opportunities with conversions. I think this is new territory for a lot of people.
I'm going to say one more thing, and that is that we see for the very small business creation from scratch, we see service cooperatives from professionals, accounting, management, marketing, that kind of thing, as being ripe for startups, because you have professionals engaged in that work already who want to team together in an ownership format that works for them. And this allows them to do it. And using the TA grant money to help them do that, and then using the loan money to get them to make investment in some of the things that will accelerate their growth and branding, it's a good thing.
Well said. And with that, let's bring it to a close. Don't forget, we have another webinar coming up on Friday, October 13th, and that is on envisioning an equitable cooperative ecosystem. So stay tuned for that. So thank you to all our speakers. Thank you to all the participants. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.